Long, long ago. Many of you probably are aware of my work overseas and my foundation that I have that builds schools and provides education in vulnerable territories. And I was in Cambodia, which was our signature area, and I was sitting under a tree, and it was very hot, and I was waiting for the group that had come that year to finish their tour of Angkor Wat, which is the big temple. And I had given them a time, and they have to walk back along this big drawbridge, and I was going to meet them by the tree. And so I was waiting, and I could not help but look at this very, very old Cambodian woman who was sitting in squat-legged position at the end of the plank. And her head was wrapped in a traditional rags, and she was just sitting there staring off into space, and her hand was rested in position, willing to take anything that some tourist or some person was able to offer her. And for whatever reason, she turned and she looked at me, and I looked at her, and there was this lingering moment, just this connection. And I felt as though she was staring right through me. And I just kept breathing and staying in the moment, at times feeling quite uncomfortable, but just being in this unusual zone of connection. And then moments later, it was over. And I remember when everybody gathered and I was back in the van and we were driving back to where we were staying, I jotted these lines down. In someone else's belief, you are rich and free. In someone else's eyes, you are capable and daring. In someone else's level of experience, you have already reached their understanding of nirvana. Whatever your story, you are as blessed as you are willing to recognize you are. And as I thought about her, thinking about me and me thinking about her, I wondered what went through her mind, and I wonder how she saw me and how I was interpreting or my perceptions of her. And this idea of we are as blessed as we are willing to recognize that we are. The litmus test of that, obviously, is being in the world and navigating through all different types of groups and not being insular and not being siloed in the same, but being so varied and immersed in various cultures that you begin to see the similarities, but also the vast differences of opportunity that we have. And so this idea of being as blessed as we recognize or realize that we are really comes down to a very primal form of paying attention. One of my favorite authors, his name is Jedediah Jenkins. Maybe I love him because I just love his name, Jedediah Jenkins. But he wrote about when he was working for a nonprofit when he was in his 30s in San Diego. And they were collaborating on a project with a group of young Ugandan people. And the plan is that they were going to bring this large Ugandan contingency to San Diego. And this was really cool because they were very mindful. They did their homework. They were mindful of the fact that Uganda is a landlocked country. They live there in San Diego. So they wanted to be very spacious with the schedule and make sure that there was plenty of time to take them to see the ocean. And the day came to go to the ocean. And along with the young people, there was a chaperone, a 72-year-old Ugandan man by the name of Norman. And Jedediah said that when they were standing on the sand in front of the waves, that he could not help but stare at Norman's face. And Norman just stood there transfixed at what he was witnessing. He had never seen the ocean before, or maybe he obviously read about it in a book or had watched it on a television program or seen it in a movie, but he had never witnessed it face to face before. And Jedediah could not take his eyes off of Norman as he stared into the waves. And after a while, Norman took this big inhalation of the sea air and he said, "Truly, this is a miracle." And fully clothed, he walked straight into the surf and just threw himself into the waves. And Jedediah had seen the ocean thousands of times. But he said, on that day, I saw it for the first time. And he said, that kind of moment is my favorite feeling in all of existence. And he calls it secondary rediscovery. Discovering something, rediscovering something through the proximity of or the witnessing of someone who is seeing it from a fresh perspective and with fresh eyes. His favorite feeling in the whole wide world. And he goes, that day, I really actually saw the ocean. And I never forgot that story because I always wanted to adopt secondary rediscovery as a spiritual practice. I believe in some ways when that elder Cambodian woman and I were locking and communicating telepathically to one another, I don't know if I was quite skilled enough yet to be able to see something through her eyes in that moment. But there was a willingness there. There was something that was drawing me in there. And instead of just waiting under a tree for the group to come, I had just entered into a world of an elder, of a sage, of a wisdom that up until that moment in time, I had been oblivious of. And I find that this is pivotal for you and for us as we navigate this crazy thing called being human. The necessity for secondary rediscovery. There's the other quote that says, if you and I are not in awe, we're not paying attention. And I don't find that to be punitive. I find that to be so directive and so urgent that it wants to grab our hands and pull us into the ability to decipher and to see and to navigate into the world, because what the world needs, right? What the world needs is for us to rediscover the principles that we say that we abide by. And that is the earnestness and the loyalty to the idea that indeed love is the only reality. And sometimes what that means is that you and I then have to become the sentinel and the embodiment of love in those places where it appears to be void, so that those who are around us can have their own version of a secondary rediscovery about the fact that love is a constant and that love is there. And so I ask you to kind of go through the Rolodex of your memories and to think about what are some of the times and what are some of the things that even to this day, when you encounter them, you connect them to a person or to a memory. One for me that makes me laugh all the time is spring. I know that's a big, wide category, but when I moved from Los Angeles, I had lived in LA for 24 years, and I moved to Mobile, Alabama. And the joke was I went from LA to LA, Lower Alabama. And I had grown up in the South, but I had really sort of forgotten the wide impact of spring in the South. And after having been there a few months, spring rolled around, and it felt like I went to bed one night and I woke up and my entire yard was just bathed in something that God had been working on all night long. I mean, everything was just like in Technicolor. And I just went, wow. And I remember the situation was a little bit vulnerable after moving. And so I advertised to teach a creative writing course. And I had quite a few signups, and all of them were the genteel Southern women that you might have come to expect in a stereotypical movie or something like that. And I was a little bit nervous, start of spring. And so, as an icebreaker, I just kind of gave my background a little bit, and that I had moved there from Los Angeles and that I had forgotten how magnificent spring was. And this one Southern woman raised her hand and she said, "Well, you realize that it was the spring that saved Mobile." And I was kind of confused by that. And I said, "No, I don't think I know this story." And she said, "Well, when the Yankees," and so the word Yankees had 3 syllables, "when the Yankees landed in Mobile Bay during the war." Now, mind you, they had already burned Atlanta and had all kinds of destruction in their path of misery. But when they landed in Mobile Bay, it was the spring. And they began to march up Government Street in their mud and their blood. And as they looked to their left and as they looked to their right, they could not help but see the azaleas and the dogwood and the daffodils and the wisteria and the Japanese magnolia. Now, mind you, they don't all bloom simultaneously, but that spring, as if God had ordained it, they were blooming together. And they could not find it in their Yankee hearts to burn such a magnificent sight. And so, you see, it was the spring that saved Mobile. And I think my jaw was on the floor. I said something like, I think you should teach this course. And I think about that woman. She gave me a secondary rediscovery about this thing called spring. And every time it rolls around year after year, I am back in that room, reminded of how impactful and how necessary and how cultural that story is to her, that I see spring through a completely different lens. One that happened recently is we went to India all of last November, and we were beginning what's called a WASH program. WASH is an acronym for Water Accessibility, Sanitation, and Hygiene. And we had been working on initiating these modules and these courses in the slums there for quite some time, and we were ready to begin. And so we were in the slums in the northern territory of Bihar in the country of India. And at the last minute before leaving Atlanta, I thought, oh my God, if I could just get my hands on a microscope so that we could show them what a germ looks like. And they could begin to see that we're not just telling them to wash their hands for some random lesson, but here's one of the reasons why, and to bridge the gap in their knowledge and in their awareness of what those types of things were. And through a long chain of events, someone in my neighborhood bought us a microscope, and I took it with us to India. That microscope became the main focal point of the entire program because they had never seen anything like that. And it wasn't just the kids. There was a special day where I enticed all of the village mothers to come and also sit and go through this training. Now, mind you, they're all illiterate. And so we had to adapt many, many things, but they got to stand also in line and for the first time to put their eye to a thing and to look at a microscope. And they started to giggle and they began to have an experience of a world outside of the realm of what they had been accustomed to. And so there was a sense of wonder. And that one little tool, that one little object broke the ice in a way that catapulted that training to a whole different degree of value. And so things that you and I take for granted of, things that we sometimes place no value on are priceless in the lives of other people. And the more that I think about secondary rediscovery as an essential thing, as a spiritual practice, as something to calm us and to remind us of the bounty and the beauty that is around us that sometimes we just go unconscious of, that it's even more than just physical things, that there's a requirement, there's an actual requirement, I believe, for any of us who are walking this path, who are subscribing to a principle that says that God is all that there is. As the noise of the world and as the division of the world becomes louder and pulls at us, the requirement is that we must find a way to understand, what is this? What is going on? How do I decipher this plane of existence? And I think in some of the workshops and such that I've offered to you, I've talked about this before, that the greater awareness is that what we are in is one single plane of form. It's the plane of form. I call it the land of two, the us and them, the right and the wrong, good and bad, up and down, worthy, not worthy, you, they, win, lose. It's duality. And if you think about this existence and our agreement as a soul to come into the land of two and to have to navigate through this duality, that what eventually helps us to recognize the blessing of what it is that we are is to understand what then it means to be in the world, to be in the land of two, but not of it. So it's the ultimate paradox, isn't it? It means that you and I get to realize that, like those paradoxical statements, you could spend an entire life building something and it could be destroyed overnight. Build it anyway. And why would we do such a thing? We could spend our entire lives devoted to emanating love to the world and it could be rejected love anyway. Why? Because it isn't about how it's received. It's about whether or not you and I, in the land of two, will still continue to show up and be the light, even when the light is being persecuted, even when the light is being denied. That we will stand up and we will revere and devote ourselves to unlayering the principle of this divine design, as we call it, or God is all that there is, in such a way that we're not talking and preaching at those people and telling them, but we are living it in such a way with such nuance and such beauty and such clarity that by showing up, we are, in point of fact, being the light in particular realms of darkness that we're not even aware of. And so we have a secondary rediscovery then about responsibility, about our reason for being. It isn't about the achievements. It isn't about the titles and things after the name. It's about how much did I consistently drop deeper into love. And as so many of these wise teachers, Ram Dass included, would say, it's about how well did I keep my heart open in hell, the hell of duality. And so as we think about that, I've been teaching a lot lately on this image. You know, this is much more than a jewelry design or a ring. This thing right here, this is the curriculum for the land of two. And you know, it's really funny because how much of our lives have we spent trying to eradicate some part of this? When what we realize is that which is the light and the dark will always be. So here's a sobering thing. then what that means that in the land of two, there will always be war. What that means that here in this plane of existence in the land of two, there will always be forms of inequality and injustice. And as the paradox says, will I love anyway? Will I teach anyway? Will I sing anyway? Will I give my art anyway? Even though I realize that there is no finish line or eradication of this, will I understand polarity, and will I understand yin yang, and will I love anyway? Because you see, if on here, if these were two different kinds of fish and the black fish needed the white fish in order to survive, and then it eventually ate all of the white fish, well, not only would the white fish then be completely extinct, then so eventually would the black. And so that which is the dark needs the light, and that which is the light needs the dark. And it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And it's hard to teach, and it's hard to offer examples when we can be so groomed and domesticated into thinking that we have to overpower and win over something. And my latest rediscovery is that, oh my God, hunger will always be. And will I raise money and feed anyway? Illiteracy and inequality will always be. And yet will we attempt to educate anyway? And you start to see then the role of the bodhisattva, that who commits themselves to helping eliminate and comfort the suffering. And we realize then that which is God, and that which is, and by saying that God is all that there is, I can now bring a little bit of integrity to that, because I can understand that what I'm referencing is not confined to the finite nature of this land of two, but what we're talking about is the infinite multiplicity, the multidimensionality of something so beyond description. And imagine you and I leaning into and surrendering to be a vessel of that, to be a vessel of multidimensionality, to be a vessel of wisdom and comfort in such a grand way that not only perhaps is someone rediscovering a life in your presence and seeing life for the first time in a fresh design because of you, but you as well, I as well, are beginning to see that also, because there is a celestial speed up of all of the things that are dark and separate falling away from us. That's what the world needs. That is the highest calling for you and I. That is the thing that speaks and pulls at us. Are we willing to be a part of that? Are we willing to see? In someone else's belief, you are rich and free. In someone else's eyes, you are capable and daring. In someone else's level of experience, you have already reached their understanding of nirvana. Whatever your story, you are as blessed as you are willing to recognize that you are. And so it is.
Thank you. No mud, no lotus. Haven't you noticed the patterns of the pain in your past? The things that broke you, they also woke you to the questions you needed to ask. The sleepless nights and exposes who you are. If it hurt, it made you softer. If it was hard, it fueled the hunger. If it touched you, your heart took hold. If it was simple, it made you wise. If it was sweet, it made you smile. Weaved an indelible impression on your soul. And your feet, they walked, and your lips, they talked, and your hands dug around for the proof. Every look, every book pictured in your mind that you took created this version of you. And everything you go through, well, it grows you. Grows you. Everything you go through, it well, it grows you. Exposes the roots of an endless summer and part-time temporary lovers and the swoon of a deep blue sky. And as the time blew, you planted and you gathered your truth as it passed before your eyes. And the wound is where the light gets in, revealing the masterpiece just beneath your skin. And in the glow of your own light, with your petals open wide, you bloom right where you are. And everything you go through, well, it grows you. Grows you. Everything, I know everything you go through, well, it grows you. Exposes who you are. No mud, no lotus. Haven't you noticed the patterns of the pain in your past? The things that broke you, well, they also awoke you to the questions you needed to ask. Ooh. Let's sing this a lot when I'm here, and it seems that it's a great send-off for us. And I like seeing you sing along and swaying. So let's see if we can do that. I am a light. I am a light. I am a light in this world. I am a light. I am a light. I am a light in this world, and I shine, and I shine, and I shine, and I shine so bright, yeah. And I shine, and I shine. we shine so bright. Mwah.